Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobby Capucci, and this is Daily Drop number 255. On tonight's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the documents that have been unsealed by Judge Preska and that are about to hit the main line this coming week. Unless, of course, the appeals court steps in and pauses that, which is always a possibility when it comes to the judicial system here in America. You never know, right? You would think that it would be a slam dunk at this point for the documents to be released, considering Preska wants them released, considering that the Second Court of Appeals has already upheld another ruling that released the first 2,000 pages that got everything really going. You would think that that same court would see this case brought before them and they would have the same reaction and toss it and uphold Judge Preska's ruling. But again, we never know, right? The judicial system, it's stacked. It is absolutely stacked, and when I say that, I mean stacked against normal folks like you and I. When it comes to people like Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and anybody else with not only money but clout, well, it's a whole different set of rules for them, folks. A whole different set. But you and I, forget about it. But again, the way things have been moving lately, we have to take a look and see what happens with these documents, because things have moved in a positive manner as of late, and I hope that that momentum keeps up and that either the Second Court of Appeals decides that they don't have time to hear this case in the time frame set by Preska and kicks it right back to her, or they take a look and they decide, you know what, let's go ahead and unseal those documents. Tonight's article is from Forbes, and that is what is going to be discussed in this article. What is in the court documents and what it means for people like Andrew. Forbes. Headline: What Ghislaine Maxwell's court document release means for Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, and others in Epstein's Little Black Book. Authored by Guy Martin. A detailed view of the contents of Jeffrey Epstein's survivor Virginia Roberts' defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, which Maxwell settled with Roberts for an undisclosed amount in 2016, has just been made possible by New York Senior District Judge Loretta Preska, who, on July 23rd, in response to a suit brought by the Miami Herald, ordered the trove to be prepared for unsealing next week. And this was a big ruling, right? There was some trepidation. A lot of people were not too convinced that Preska was going to go ahead and do this. But here we are. Preska decided to unseal them. She made the move to do that. And of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's team, well within their rights, appealed the decision. And now we wait. The good thing is Preska put a pretty slim time frame on this, a week. So it's not a long waiting game like we're used to in this case, but still, nonetheless, a bit of a wait. Now we wait and see what happens. Frankly, I'm pretty convinced that these documents will be released this week. The Herald's superb 2018 series of articles on Epstein is credited with triggering his arrest and meticulously planned prosecution last year. All documents in this initial unsealing were part of the discovery phase of Virginia Roberts' 2015 suit, which claimed defamation since, in refuting Miss Roberts' claims of being groomed and trafficked, Maxwell had accused Miss Roberts of lying. And this is the case that is at the heart of the conversation tonight. This is what we're talking about. This is where the documents are going to be dumped from. The original defamation case between Virginia and Ghislaine Maxwell. So this is going to be all sorts of stuff about what occurred while Epstein and Maxwell were running this criminal enterprise and what happened to Virginia. So someone like Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, has to be shitting bricks right now. Just when he thinks that things can't get worse, bam, here we are. With all of these documents about to be dropped, and this disgusting, gross son of a bitch, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family's name, is going to be all over it. The documents supply context and filigree detail of the inner workings of Epstein's operation, since the core of Robert's dispute with Maxwell concerned Robert's characterization of that. And this is important stuff, right? This is the kind of stuff that really pushes a case forward. The inner workings of the operation. That's big news, folks. And we've heard from Virginia a lot, and she has told her story. She has come forward and told her story at the forefront when nobody wanted to listen. But as the author is talking about here, we're going to get a little more context, and we're going to be able to see in detail just a little bit more meat on the bone. What was going on the inside of Epstein's criminal enterprise. And I don't know about you folks, but I am fascinated by what we're going to find in these documents. And there's going to be a ton to read, right? A ton of documents to go over. So the second they get released, I'll be diving in, but I know all of you out there are going to be doing the same. So maybe we'll break it up into sections, right? Maybe a couple of us read, the first 150 pages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, take notes, blah, blah, blah. And that way we can, go through the story and try and stack it, because it's going to be a lot. And I see on Twitter tonight that people are already going through the first dump, and I think that's awesome, because as much time as I've spent reading through these documents, I've for sure have missed stuff, little tidbits here and there, things that I might not have thought were important at the time, but going back now to look at it, it's obviously important. So it's awesome watching all the research happen as we speak, and all the people interested in the case sleuthing around and putting, A together with B. That kind of stuff is invaluable to content creators like myself and others, because at the end of the day, we only have so much time, right? We can only delve so deep, and we can only do what we can do. Most people that are creating content are one or two people operations. So with creating the content, coming up with new shows, et cetera, it makes it a really easy when you have listeners that are on top of things the way I do, because the tips that you folks send me in emails are just fantastic, phenomenal stuff. So please keep that up. The documents include the transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell's own 7-hour deposition at the hands of Virginia Roberts' lawyers on the subject of Maxwell's relationship, both professional and personal, with Epstein, estimated to run at some 400 pages. Wow, maybe what we should do is go over some of those documents on the podcast, read through them, stuff like that. And I think that's what we will do. Maybe the whole deposition. Maybe we'll do the whole deposition, all 400 pages. Because I'll tell you what, it's important to add to the catalog, right? It really is important to know exactly what was said in this deposition, because everything is being based on that. This is where the meat and the potatoes come into play, folks, right? This is where the context really slaps us in the face, and where we really add meat to that bone. Of more direct concern of Prince Andrew and his working group of lawyers and public relations advisors, Robert's deposition by Maxwell's lawyers is also included in the dozen documents to be released. Maxwell's lawyers argued before Judge Preska for postponement of the unsealing in order to allow Maxwell to mount an appeal, but Judge Laska ruled Thursday that if the Second Circuit did not soon move to accept the appeal, the documents would be made public. And that's what I was talking about previously with the Second Circuit of Appeals. If they don't move on this and they don't take this case right away, then Preska's going to go forward and drop these documents by Thursday. That's how adamant she is about what's going on here, folks. And I think she needs to get some credit for that. I think Preska needs to get some credit for that. She took some unneeded flack when people kind of had the wrong idea about documents being quote-unquote destroyed in this case. They weren't original documents. They were documents that were copies that were given to the lawyers, right? So instead of giving Dershowitz an in and a loophole to use, she quashed it right away. So I think Preska deserves a little bit of credit here. And while I was pretty hard on her going into this, I think that, you have to look at someone's actions, right? And her actions thus far have been in line with somebody who is looking to do justice in this case, in my opinion. In this context, it's important to remember how crucial Virginia Roberts' narrative of her 3 alleged encounters with Prince Andrew are to her claims of being trafficked to London and elsewhere, but specifically to London at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. This is the kind of stuff that is really, really bad for Prince Andrew, right? The Joe Exotic of the Windsor family is absolutely going to be decimated. It's one thing to hear about what was in the defamation, or to see a little bit of the leak of what was in the defamation suit, or of what was said about Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. It's a whole nother thing to read it for yourself in court documents, right? That is a complete and utter reality check for anybody who might have questions about what's going on here. In this sense, it can be argued that the news of the release of the civil documents is worse for Prince Andrew than it is for his old friend Maxwell, since Andrew sits in Windsor Royal Lodge in a luxe sort of confinement of his own making, unindicted, but inexorably at the forefront of the thinking at every twist the criminal case against his friend takes. And yeah, for sure, Ghislaine Maxwell is already paying the piper. She's the one in the jumpsuit. She's the one in the 6x10 cell. She's the one eating bologna sandwiches, not Prince Andrew. So hell yeah, this dude has to be scared. There's zero doubt in my mind that a few sleepless nights have been had, and guess what? He deserves it. I wonder how many sleepless nights Virginia had after this son of a bitch did what he did to her. Asked on July 8th on ABC about Prince Andrew on a Sunday morning talk show, Attorney General William Barr said that he, Andrew, should just come on in and talk to the FBI. With that simple aside, Darth Barr echoed the message from the lead federal prosecutor of Ghislaine Maxwell upon Maxwell's indictment in New York. Andrew should hop on a plane. Well, that's fairy tale land, right? We know that Andrew's definitely not hopping on a plane. He's definitely not coming to America. That's just out of the question. So, in reality, what they really need to do is just get him to sit down for an interview in person under oath. Because, again, we've talked about it here on the podcast, and anyone who follows the news, even just a little bit, knows that the FBI loves to walk people into perjury charges, right? They love to try and catch you lying. They don't want to go after, child trafficking rings when Maria Farmer goes to them in the 90s, but Lord knows, if you lie to the FBI, forget it. They're trying to put you under Guantanamo Bay. The prince is not likely to venture across the pond. The ubiquitous, highly operative presence of Maxwell and Epstein's circle was uncomfortable enough for Andrew and the British royal family before she was indicted. Hence, the swift retirement of Andrew after Epstein's suicide in jail and the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family's disastrous BBC interview last year. Yeah, they moved quickly, there's no doubt. But it's not because they have a moral compass that they're following. It's because they're trying to save face, right? I hate to say it, but the royal family, they don't give a damn about these survivors. They don't care one lick. They care about saving face, consolidating their power, and making sure that this doesn't hurt the royal family as a whole. But for them, the unfortunate news for them is the egg is already on the face, and the queen is not looking good here, folks. Not at all. In a public relations sense, Andrew was arguably the only royal even remotely relieved by the ungainly Megxit process staged in the first quarter of 2020 by his nephew Harry and Meghan Markle, since they unwittingly provided him, Andrew, with weeks of cover in which he did not occupy the front page of every paper in Britain. All right, hold up. Don't blame this Harry and Meghan Markle for splitting, okay? I would have done the same if I was part of this family, probably. That's for one. And two, it's not on Harry and Meghan Markle that the papers decided to cover what they were up to and thought it was more important than what the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family was facing. Blame the papers, not this Harry and Meghan, the Harry and Meghan over here. The ongoing dissection of Joe Exotic of the Windsor family's tangled, decades-long involvement with Epstein would not be put to rest by the prince's nephew's bumbling, miniature abdication. The subsequent federal investigation of Maxwell and its current result, the detailed 17-page indictment on trafficking and conspiracy charges, and Maxwell's incarceration with no prospect of bail, has swiftly refocused the Klieg lights onto the beleaguered prince. And they should have. The English media, the British media, for the most part, has done a pretty good job in covering this case, in my opinion. Way better than the American media. The media in the United States, the legacy media in the United States, is an absolute dumpster fire. There's no investigative reporting anymore. It's all circular reporting. One person reports something, then everybody reports the same exact thing, just a different way, or runs it in their outlet. There's no room for investigative journalists anymore. Only room for people who want to gaslight and lie. The Southern District of New York's prosecutors will be well aware of the contents of Virginia Roberts' civil action against Ghislaine Maxwell. To say that Miss Maxwell is savvy is an understatement. The Oxford-educated former ocean preservation activist is clearly enormously intelligent, and she would have used that as she sat for her hostile deposition by Miss Roberts' lawyers. Well, I can't dispute that. I've said several times here on the podcast that Ghislaine Maxwell is a very intelligent person. There's no denying that. She was the brains of the operation. Epstein was nowhere near as smart as people make him out to be. He might have had, a little bit of savvy when it comes to numbers or something, but to make this guy out as some kind of genius, well, I find that laughable at best. And the only reason somebody like Jeffrey Epstein was even gained entrance to places like Harvard or MIT or to places like the Edge Foundation is because he had money, okay? Because he was bringing money to the table. And access, of course, to the dirtbag politicians that came along with it. And as far as Maxwell goes, well, there is no doubt that she is a very intelligent woman, but not intelligent enough to keep up this run that she was on, right? It was all coming to an end. And now, she sits in a jail cell, rotting away. So I guess she wasn't that smart after all, though, right? Still, a 7-hour deposition is a grueling gauntlet to have to run, and Miss Roberts' lawyers would have wanted to squeeze every last drop of juice from the lemon, so to speak. The time-honored tactic in such an interrogation is to circle back and back and back over the same ground in slightly differing ways until the subject tires and lets slip some set of details in a narrative that might approximate a truth. And that's what they're looking for, right? Like I said, they want to dog walk you. Whenever you're doing a deposition, whenever you're sitting down under oath in general, you are going to get some quote-unquote trick questions. They're going to circle back. They're going to try and catch you lying, and they're going to try and destroy your credibility. And that is just the age-old tactic. That is how it works when it comes to these depositions. And I am sure in the 7 hours that Ghislaine Maxwell was deposed by Virginia's lawyers, there were a few points where she was absolutely dog-walked, and we see it with the perjury charges. We can look forward to this in Ghislaine Maxwell's transcript. What we can also look forward to, aside from her own rationalizations of her role in Jeffrey Epstein's life, will be the context of the household operation she led for Epstein. So we know a lot of the stuff, right? We've heard a lot of the stuff. We've seen a lot of the information from the other dump, et cetera, et cetera. But now with this coming out and it being court documents, it gives it a whole new feel, right? It really gives it a whole new feel. And it is going to be really, really bad for Jeffrey Epstein's remaining cohorts. Because the inside look that we're going to get here is going to shock and disturb many people who have not been paying attention. Strewn throughout the papers as part of the context will be names from Epstein's infamous Little Black Book. There will be quite a few of them. Judge Preska acknowledged as much in stating that she would institute a system for vetting them. And I think that that's fair, of course, because we have to, use some discernment when we're talking about the Black Book. We need context for what's going on. Obviously, everybody in that book needs to be questioned, but we have to be able to wade through the BS to get to the good stuff, right? To the stuff that really matters. So it's going to be interesting to see some context added to what we already know about the names in that Black Book. By February 2000, Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, then 39, had cemented his global reputation as a party-hardy royal. Pictured above on February 12, 2000, at a party in the future Winter White House, Mar-a-Lago, Andrew was in his element with Epstein, who was the social glue for Andrew, as pictured above within the little ensemble composed of the future First Lady of the United States, then model Melania Knauss, and the future Virginia Congressional also ran, and former money manager Gwendolyn Beck. Well, isn't that nice, the ties that bind? She's another one. Well, I have to distance myself from Jeffrey Epstein, blah, blah, blah. Please, okay? Gwendolyn Beck is another person that was not only connected to Jeffrey Epstein, but she had very close ties to Epstein and a lot of folks in his cabal here. At the halcyon moment for them all in 2000, Andrews and the future First Lady's obvious mirth at Epstein cracking wise seems genuine. A good time seems to have been had by all. In the second photograph from the top above, Andrews hanging out with Miss Knauss seems to have gotten the better of him. And that's why it was comical to me when Donald Trump came out and acted like he didn't really know them. Oh yeah, I didn't really know what was going on. I guess they lived in Palm Beach. Come on, old Donnie boy. That shit's not going to fly. I mean, are you kidding me? If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check out Andrew Schultz's response to Donald Trump saying he wishes Maxwell well. It is absolutely hilarious. Andrew Schultz is a comedian, and the dude is funny as hell. So make sure you check out his response. It's like a 5-6 minute video, and it is absolutely hilarious. In the third photograph from the top above, it's possible to get a glimpse of Miss Maxwell in her ferocious socializer role, making an effort to bond with her old friend Andrew's ex-wife Sarah Ferguson at an Asprey store opening party in 2003. Suffice it to say that, for Maxwell, Sarah Ferguson would never have been the real target. Of course, it's always about Andrew. It was always about moving into those other levels of power for Epstein and Maxwell. That was at the heart of their honey trap. It was all about trapping and bringing powerful people under their thumb. So, of course, they're going to traverse the halls of power. And what is more powerful than digging yourself in, embedding yourself with the royal family and a prince of the blood at that? But it would be a central tactic in the Maxwell playbook to ensure future ease of access to selected male royals. And Andrew is, or was, the Windsor royal with whom she maintained an absolutely close connection, by aggressively schmoozing their nearest and dearest. As is well known, Sarah Ferguson still lives at Windsor Royal Lodge, albeit in separate quarters where Andrew resides and is currently in retreat. Oh yeah, separate quarters, right, sure. I mean, what is wrong with these two? The Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, and I believe it was Lisa and Jen over at the Prince and the Pervert podcast who dubbed Fergie the Carol Baskin of the Windsor family, which is hilarious. I believe it was Jen and Lisa. That is some funny stuff as well, but it's true. These two aren't broken up. Give me a break. They're obviously in some kind of open relationship, and who cares, really? I mean, whatever you want to do behind closed doors, that's fine with me, but don't run around and act like you're not involved with each other anymore. It's obvious that, when they say there's somebody for everybody on this planet, these two are a match made in heaven, right? Significantly, in June 2019, mere weeks before Epstein's suicide in detention, allegedly, Buckingham Palace saw zero problems with having Prince Andrew attend a wreath-laying in his official capacity for the crown with Melania and Donald Trump on their state visit to the UK. Donnie, Donald Trump doesn't know them, though. He's not very close to Andrew. Had no idea. Didn't he say that Andrew knew something about the island, though? Come on, Don. Put another way, Buckingham Palace was well aware of Andrew's decades-long connection to the Trumps before they were even the Trumps. It's why Andrew featured prominently in last summer's state visit. And all kidding aside, I know I'm breaking Trump's balls over here about his statement with Maxwell. Look, a guy like Prince Andrew most assuredly was friendly with Donald Trump, okay? And the distancing that Trump does with this whole story is just makes me mental. It really makes me mad. For their part, UK barristers and legal eagles of all stripes labor under zero illusions about the lurching, on-again, off-again game of badminton that Andrew and his dogged pursuers, Ghislaine Maxwell's federal prosecutors in Manhattan, are playing. They know they can't extradite him. Highly respected British media lawyer Mark Stevens bluntly opined to a London tabloid about the U.S. Department of Justice and their New York prosecutors. What they're trying to do is get him over voluntarily and, if they think they've got enough evidence, charge him there. He's not a witness. He's a covert target of this operation. What have I been saying now for months? All right? That's how these cases work. They bring you in and, oh, you're just a witness. No worries. Just come on in and sit down with us. And before you know it, you're sitting down with some seasoned interrogators and you're getting your whole entire life shifted upside down. They're talking to you about all sorts of shit. And before you know it, they have you in a lie and now you have a perjury charge. And I believe then, and I believe even more strongly now, that is what's going on with Andrew. That they're definitely trying to get him in to a perjury charge, at the very least. Because the evidence against him, folks, is damning. Andrew seems to think the very same thing, or something remarkably similar, and has done since he and his working group of barristers and media advisors have been huddled in strategy for some weeks. Last week, he canceled a planned luxury golf trip to Satan Grande in southern Cadiz province of the Mediterranean, where he had golfed last year. 3 fine courses are within short drives of each other, and the beach in Soto Grande, the Valderrama Club and famed San Roque Golf Club, and the Royal Golf Club of Soto Grande. It's thought that Spain's robust extradition treaty with the United States was a factor in the cancellation, which dovetails nicely with what an unidentified Buckingham Palace source described to a British journalist as the prince's plans to travel exactly nowhere within the EU and never again to the US. Think about that, folks. A prince of the blood of England has tucked his tail and is afraid to travel. You think he doesn't know what's going on? You don't think he doesn't know that his position is untenable? He's in big trouble here, folks. Big trouble. The Joe Exotic of the Windsor family is most assuredly a target in the criminal investigation by the FBI. I don't have evidence to back that up, but in my opinion, and from following this case for as long as I have, and the evidence to where we have followed it to, there is zero doubt in my mind that Andrew is most assuredly a target in this case and not a witness. However, Andrew shaved down recreational travel workouts, or not. The larger game between the Prince and the Department of Justice just took a more pointed businesslike turn in June, immediately prior to Miss Maxwell's indictment and arrest, when the DOJ filed a mutual legal assistance request with the British government in order to get the UK government to force the Prince to answer questions about Epstein. This set the stage for Attorney General Barr to up the ante on ABC on July 8th. And we've discussed this already at length. The MLA is a big deal. They bypassed the royal family completely and went directly to the law infrastructure of England. And they're trying to put pressure on the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family publicly, so that he is under so much strain and so much pressure that his only move is to speak to the FBI. Tantalizingly, there are J. Does in the document referring to what the Herald's lawyer described as non-parties, meaning persons named who were not party to the 2015 civil suit. So that means that there are parties that were involved, hanging around, involved in other aspects, that are going to be named in this suit, even though they were not being sued. As is well known, Epstein fueled his operation both professional and personal with a distinct largesse, which meant that there was a parade of better-known characters invited by Epstein to his various properties and or whom he invited for trips on his jet. Again, this document release is about context supplied by the claimant, the defendant, and their legal teams prior to trial in a civil action, so that we cannot know until the pages are public whether Prince Andrew, Harvard professor Allen, I kept my underpants on, Dirty Dershowitz, the sitting president, or anybody else in Epstein's little black book will be mentioned, much less compromised. But it is highly likely that the non-parties in these documents are denizens of Epstein's then cosmos, thus are among the listed in the little black book. And look, I've said it for a very, very, very long time at this point. There are going to be some names that come out of this whole entire ordeal that are going to shock people. Not so much you folks out there who've been paying attention, because you're aware of what's going on and you've had some time for the shock of the scope of this whole thing to settle in on you. But other people are going to see what's happening here and they're going to their eyes are going to pop out of their head. For his part, Harvard professor Alan Dirty Dershowitz, a friend and former lawyer of Epstein, who advised him as he squeaked out his generous deal from the Florida prosecutors in 2008, welcomed the release. Dershowitz, who is, in a combative turn, suing Virginia Roberts for having accused him of being among the men to whom she was trafficked, said, "I'm thrilled that all the documents come out because I have nothing to hide." This guy is such an absolute piece of garbage, a piece of human excrement. Dirty Dersh, Mr. I kept my underpants on, is a straight-up scuzzbag, a scumbag, and a bully who thinks it's okay to bully people who are battling cancer and take them out of context and try and label them with something as heinous as being an anti-Semite, when it's rather obvious to anyone paying attention that Maria was obviously talking about those in power, those that don't care about religion or ethnicity or anything like that. All right? All they care about is consolidating their power. That is who she was talking about. And this dirty son of a bitch thinks it's a good idea to attack her in a paper, in Newsmax, in that sort of trashy-ass garbage outlet. Dirty Dershowitz is about to get all kinds of eviscerated on this podcast very soon, folks. Be ready for that. Judge Preska's ruling does not just make possible this impending release. Apparently, there are thousands of pages in the pipeline that the judge will assess for release as she develops what has been termed a process of vetting those records. This involves allowing the mentioned John Does to object or not object to their names being made public. And again, I think that that's a fair step, right? Because we want to make sure that the target is placed on the proper people. People who deserve the scorn, people who deserve the hard questions. Let's make sure that it is a surgical strike, right? There is way too much garbage around this case, way too much disinformation, and way too many rabbit holes that lead nowhere. So it's important that we really, really stick to what's going on here, and especially once these documents come out, forget it. It is going to be bedlam. And it is going to be bad for all of these people that were involved with Epstein. Maxwell's criminal defense team will be quite disappointed at the judge's decision, since the release will form a base for vigorous digging into the meat of the lawsuit and their client's behavior. but Maxwell already sits in detention, having not won her argument for bail, so that the perceived public relations damage to her criminal case will be minor compared to the public relations damage that some of the named non-parties may experience as a result of the document release. And again, people like Les Wexner and Jess Staley and Glenn Dubin and Bill Richardson and George Mitchell, who are very rarely even talked about in the American media when it comes to this case, are all going to be put on blast eventually throughout from these documents. And I'll tell you what, they all deserve it. Every single person I just mentioned there deserves to have tons of articles penned about them, because they all played an intricate part in what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. It has been an incremental ride down this hot landing zone for the Queen's decorated Royal Navy chopper Pilot's Son, one that led a gentle descent for years, which during 2019 became a precipitous drop. Since then, in London and in New York legal circles, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family's value as a witness and his possible criminal involvement via Ghislaine Maxwell have become topic A. Joe Exotic of the Windsor family enjoys the official, if not the public, presumption of innocence and remains uncharged. But he has still somehow managed to paint himself into a corner with his resolute, multiple public denials of Virginia Roberts' accusations. And for sure, look, at the end of the day, this is what we do here, and talking about this case elsewhere, that's just how it goes. It's just on a larger scale now because we have the internet at our disposal, and we're all connected. Before, you'd talk with your buddies at lunch, at work, whatever it may be. But now we are all connected on every continent. Everybody can talk to each other, and just the way it goes. There's no, oh, well, this can't be tried in the court of public opinion. Well, sorry, that ship has sailed, my friend. The content from the two main depositions of that lawsuit, settled by Maxwell, will land imminently. In fact, it can be argued that the lawsuit was settled in 2016 with a modicum of dispatch in order to seal the court records, and in that it's possible to see the savvy Maxwell at work, defending her privacy and that of her very well-heeled friends. In her deposition, Roberts will be at pains to explain that she was not lying as she alleges being trafficked by Maxwell. One accusation that she repeatedly made in public over the last couple of years is that she was, at the age of 17, flown to London, taken shopping by Ghislaine Maxwell, and told by Maxwell that she would meet a prince. Roberts' description of that evening with Prince Andrew includes her narrative of sexual intercourse with the prince at Ghislaine Maxwell's Belgravia townhouse after a visit to a nightclub. This is one of many narratives that the prince denies. The prince lies. The prince denies, the prince lies. Because we've seen the proof, we've seen the pictures. What are you doing with your arm around that little girl, you sick bastard? Really, that's the question that everybody should be asking. All this other shit is noise. Why are you and those other two sick, disgusting predators at a house with this girl and your arms around her and you're about to take her upstairs and be a sick prick? That's the real question that should be asked. Forget all this other background bullshit, okay? The triggering effect of the document release beginning shortly will be great. Whatever details this tranche of documents contain or allege, the resulting invigorated public scrutiny of that entire time period in Prince Andrew, the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family's life, and in his friend Epstein's life, will present Joe Exotic of the Windsor family and his working group of legal and public relations advisors with a choice. They will have to unfetter their hitherto unhurried approach toward a more cooperative posture with the American authorities, or, somewhat likelier, they will have to figure out how to employ that process as cover for a more successful groundhog backing slowly into his burrow attempt than they have been able to provide the prince to date. And that's a really good analogy, honestly, because we talk about it all the time, right? How they like to drag their feet. They want to make this drawn out, this process, as long as possible. The longer, the better. And that's what they've been trying to do this whole entire time. Make it a long process. Hopefully people will forget. Well, not this time. It's up for grabs whether anybody can or could successfully blurry the issue for the prince, but that possibility seems far more remote now. Either way, the news of the document release of the Roberts civil action is bad news for Andrew, and as more documents than these immediate ones will be made public by Judge Preska, the retired prince's legal and public relations prospects for the coming months look rough. Hallelujah. If anyone deserves to have their relations look rough and their life be difficult, it is the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. This dude ran around thinking he could do whatever he wanted. Abuse Virginia, hang out with whoever he wants, Epstein, and there'll be no repercussions, huh? Nobody can touch you. I'm the Prince of England. Well, buddy, doesn't matter in the year 2020. Because in the year 2020, Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, this is the year that all of you predators turned into the prey. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that pertain to the episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has recently donated to the GoFundMe and everybody who has donated in general, thank you very much. All right, everybody, we'll be back tomorrow with a little bit more.